Never doubt, right? Never a doubt. 37-20 Ole Miss covered and won and all of the stuff. And people were going to look at that tomorrow and think that nothing went wrong and everything went as bad as good as it could for the Ole Miss Rebels. We both know that that's not totally true, but we will see moving forward what can be done. The good news is there's stuff that we can pick apart. We don't even have to nitpick to get us ready for Georgia Tech and then Alabama as well. Anyway, this is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Ole Miss 37-20 victors over Tulane. Hey, before we get started, for the Tulane people in there, people know that Tulane is like my second favorite team anyway. So this was always a bittersweet game, and I wasn't looking forward to this. Ole Miss did what an SEC team is supposed to do to a team in a situation that Tulane was. Props to Willie Fritz for making that game as sloppy as it was in the first half. Willie Fritz deserves all the credit for making that game really sloppy. And Ole Miss had trouble trying to force the run. They kind of had entitled play calling and very predictable play calling early, and that allowed Tulane to basically just, hey, attack the ball, see the ball, to go after Quinshon Judkins, and that would cause long yardage situations and inopportune stuff. And we told you, Tulane has a really good front, both offensively and defensively, and they got to work a little bit. Now, they wore down at the end, which, like I said, a G5 team tends to do against an SEC team. But that wasn't necessarily anything that is horrible. It's a good player. Now, Tulane tested Ole Miss this week. They did. And maybe not the way that we expected them to and what we wanted with Michael Pratt, because, you know, if Michael Pratt was in that game, Ole Miss might not win that. They might not be the victors in that game. And that's just the truth, because Ole Miss came out and played unbelievably sloppy. Our keys to the game this week was play a clean game. That was an unbelievably sloppy game. Procedural type penalties. They had to waste timeouts to avoid delays of game, turnovers, all kinds of stuff. It was a sloppy game. Again, credit to Willie Fritz for forcing that to happen, but it still happened. And then they turned the ball over from time to time. And if you look at how they handle explosive plays in this game, Tulane's offense, if you take away the explosive plays, was not very effective. They ended up with about 300 yards of offense, but they did have a couple of explosive plays, which allowed the game to get a little bit hairy. Ole Miss in the second half played relatively well. They played better than they did in the first half, which I don't know if it's saying that much. That's kind of a valedictorian summer school argument, but they were able to do that. And the defense honestly won that game for the Ole Miss Rebels. As crazy as it sounds, the offense was discombobulating. The play calling was predictable. They played sloppy offensively. Jackson Dart quietly, though, had a winner's performance at quarterback as well. Now, if you want to look at stats in this game, it was like only 363 yards. Ole Miss did have the one turnover. I think Dayton Wade kind of slipped coming out of the break, and that caused Jackson Dart to lead the receiver. Tulane got the pick there. They immediately picked the ball off. Tulane had 342 in total. The quarterback, that Kai Horton, the backup to Michael Pratt, was 15 to 37 for 231, a touchdown and interception. Mikael Hughes, I think that's his name, Mekhi Hughes, ended up with 92 yards. Ole Miss only gave up about 3 yards per carry on rush defense. They actually played relatively well. There's a couple of things that they need to clean up, but the defense played pretty well indeed. Jackson Dart, he did all right. The pass to Michael Trigg was a game winner. Fourth down, he avoided a rush, made a perfect pass. Trigg showed up at a big moment, caught the ball. Maybe that is the step that takes him the way it goes. Quinshon Judkins had 48 yards rushing. I would be willing to bet that about 97% of those were in the second half, and Dayton Wade had a big day at 7 catches for 108 yards. If you look at defensive stats, This is entry. Sunterian Perkins did not play. I do not know why. He went from leading the team in tackles in week 1 to not even playing in week 2. I do not know the story there. Trey Washington played a good bit. Corey Coleman kind of turned up. Isaac Ukwu quietly had a pretty good day defensively for the Ole Miss defense. Jared Ivey had the scoop and score for the put away touchdown. If you look at tackles for loss and sacks, Ole Miss's defensive front did honestly their job. They did what they were supposed to do. And if you look at the individual stats, throwing the ball, Jackson Dart, decent day, 17 to 27, 2 touchdowns and a pick. If you look at running the ball, they did not run the ball at a level that they want. Tulane averaged 2.5 yards a carry for 111 yards total. That's important to realize as well. It's a situation where I am as upset as I am about what I saw in the first half. And if you saw my video that I put out at halftime for the halftime reaction that was released as a short, I was not happy with the offensive play calling. I was not happy with the sloppiness of the team. I was not happy with different ways and things that were going on. Tulane was controlling that football game, the tempo, everything. All of the things that I talked about all week in ways that Tulane could make that a squirrely type game, that was happening. Ole Miss scored almost instantly. Ole Miss went straight down the field and scored a touchdown to Trey Harris. Trey Harris, I think, got injured, did not come back in the game. We're going to talk to John Macon Gillespie in just a second about what was going on. There is a ton of stuff to watch this game to not be happy about. Especially, anytime you have a game like this, the offense struggles. You do have a head coach making $9 million a year. And I do think that needs to be said. So critique and criticism is going to be warranted in situations like that. They did not look good. This was a team that did not come out and look ready to play. I don't know if it was the fact that it was Tulane. I don't know if the fact that they didn't respect the fact that they beat USC last year or Kansas State last year, or if they didn't respect the number next to their name. But they did not come out ready to play, and they were not focused early on. And that field was hotter than the surface of the sun. Now, we're going to talk to John Macon Gillespie about what is going on with Tulane and in this game. Hey, John Macon, welcome back to the show, the postgame show. I've just been going on a little bit of a rant about play calling and predictability and all kinds of stuff. What did you see in the game?
Well, it was exactly how we thought it would go, right, Stephen? It was exactly how we drew it up in the pregame. I thought the first drive, obviously, of the game was great for Ole Miss. I mean, Lane Kiffin has shown for a long time that he's great at those first scripted drives. After that, in the first half, I saw struggles up front, obviously. Lot of issues on both sides of the ball in the trenches in the first half, and especially on offense, right? I mean, Ole Miss finished with less than 100 yards rushing, which is almost unheard of for a Lane Kiffin team at this stage. But I just finished a piece of 3 of my takeaways from the game. First was that Jackson Dart put this offense on his back today, in my opinion. Whether it was in the rushing game, when they needed something on the ground, or especially in the passing game. And his 4th down touchdown pass to Michael Trigg was one of the most impressive things I've ever seen him do. It was incredible. So I was pleased with how Jackson played as a whole. The second one, I think there's issues on the offensive line right now. I don't know. I didn't play offensive line, so I'm not very familiar with schematics with things like that. But Tulane's front 7 got in the backfield and clogged running lanes a lot more than I thought they would today, as evidenced by how much Ole Miss struggled to run the football. But at the end of the day, you look at it, it's not a pretty win. But you were on the road. You were playing a top 25 team who is pretty talented.
Ranked. There's a number next to their name. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And showed last year, even without Michael Pratt, that they're dangerous. Came out with a win on the road. I think that in itself makes it a good day for Ole Miss, but there are obviously things that need to be solved over the next couple weeks.
Yeah, and the good news is this is the good news and the solace that Ole Miss can take. If anybody wants positive spin about what happened today, here it is. You won the game by 17 points. You more than doubled the line of the game. You are going to be ranked higher next week than you were. You have some stuff that you need to work on, but you know stuff that you need to work on going in there. You're not going to walk into Bryant-Denny Stadium in 14 days and there be a surprise about something related with the offensive line. I guarantee you there's going to be some inside drill run on the Ole Miss campus where they do inside run like crazy to let the offensive line go against that defensive line so they can get better. Now, quietly, the defensive front seven played a pretty good game. Tulane had 2.5 yards a carry. They gave up a couple of explosive pass plays, but other than that, there was about 150, 160 yards of offense, and Tulane was never going to drive the field against Ole Miss, I don't think.
No, and I I should have probably put that in. I should have maybe made it 4 takeaways instead of 3, but I thought Pete Golding's unit as a whole played pretty well today. They did struggle at times to slow down the running back whose name escapes me, but they did struggle to slow him down at times. But as a whole, especially in the second half, I mean, I thought that they played pretty well. And to me, I think both sides of the ball looked improved after halftime. There were obviously some adjustments that were made at halftime. And I also think that Tulane had started to get worn down a little bit. So I mean that's a good thing. You give up that scoring drive to start, and then in the first half, things kind of look a little discombobulated on defense. But as a whole, again, halftime adjustments. I think that the defense as a whole played pretty well today.
Yeah, and one of the players that I am interested about that had a little bit of a day. Now, we need to find out why Sunterian Perkins didn't play today. I think we do need to find that out, and eventually that should come. That might be coming out in the press conference as we speak right now. But Isaac Ukwu was very good. Corey Coleman played a quietly good game at linebacker. He's the one that punched out the ball that had Jared Ivey's touchdown. DeAndre Prince played very well. You saw improvement from week 1 to week 2 defensively. You saw a little bit of regression offensively, but defensive on that side of the ball, you saw improvement. And I want to know what about Sunterian Perkins. I want to know about Trey Harris. Do we know what's going on with Trey?
No, not anything definitive, and I don't expect Lane to say anything definitive about that because he usually plays those things pretty close to the chest. Things that I had heard or seen was that he just wasn't going to play in the second half. I had seen some stuff maybe about a knee brace, but I'm not sure if that's accurate or not. And I didn't even notice the play that he was injured on. I didn't notice that he was hurt. Until I saw a drive or two later. I was like, okay, Trey Harris is not on the field. But Perkins, I have no idea. I thought I might have seen him on special teams, but I may have been totally wrong there. I don't remember seeing him at all on defense.
Yeah, what I'm afraid happened, and this is something that I think the fan base is going to figure out and get upset about, okay? And that is that this team played more of a 4-man front this week as opposed to playing a 3-man front last week, which meant Sunterian fell down the depth chart and other linebackers were ahead of him. That is what I think happened. I don't think anything went wrong. So you could be right about him playing on special teams and doing that stuff. But I would like to I'd like to confirm what is going on there as well.
Right. And it may have been, my eyesight isn't great, but I'm pretty sure I saw a number 4 out on punt return team, but I could be totally wrong.
Yeah, should be pretty good. Now, like I said, You have a win against a ranked team on the road playing their Super Bowl. This would be the equivalent if Ole Miss did the same thing. If Ole Miss had the same thing happen in 2015 against Memphis, nobody would be complaining about that in hindsight. As it was going on, they'd be complaining like crazy. Imagine that first half and the Robert Kimdichie and all of that stuff happening, but all of a sudden Ole Miss was able to pull away at the end and they won that game. Nobody would be talking about that game later on, and nobody's going to be talking about this game at the end of the season. I don't think you can do transitive property to where you say, okay, well, we're obviously in trouble this year, or any more than you could say with Mercer, everything was going to be sunshine and roses and we were going to be winning a national championship. I just don't think it works that way. I think that Ole Miss has a chance to be pretty good moving forward. And if you look at the other teams in the Southeastern Conference, Tennessee and Austin Peay, they were tied at halftime or something like that. Arkansas barely was struggling with Kent State. All
Miami
of these
and
teams. Did we get a final score in that game?
No, I think we had a final result, but not an actual final score. I don't know if I've seen that or not.
Yeah.
I'm checking.
David Holly says Perkins was on special teams, played defense on the last season.
Okay.
Series. Thank you very much, David, for that. It was interesting. All of this stuff going on. I'm checking the Texas A&M Miami score right now. If and when that gets
48-33.
Ooh, that is not good for the Aggies. And honestly,
in front of that crowd at Miami, yeah, not good.
Yeah, and the SEC is down. Okay, don't let anybody tell you the SEC is fine. The SEC is down. But you know what? That's good for us. Yeah, that is good for Ole Miss. And this conference is going to be gettable in the West right now. The two most impressive teams in the SEC West is probably Ole Miss and State. As crazy as that is, right now Alabama is not looking great against Texas. They're just not. A&M got double digits boat raced by Miami. LSU, we all saw what LSU did. So Ole Miss is in good shape. And whenever you start playing the transitive game, I don't know if you can really do that. I don't know if that is something that is going to be beneficial and is going to make you look. I'll put it to you like this. After today, and not just counting the Ole Miss game, I know exactly what my next 2 week shows are going to be. Ole Miss can beat Alabama. This Ole Miss team can beat Alabama.
Yeah. And I will say this. I was thinking kind of partway through the second half, I was thinking, okay, how am I going to, put these stories together depending on what the result of the game happens to be. But I was thinking, okay, one, but people have referred to this as Tulane Super Bowl, right? I mean, this was a huge deal for Tulane fans, for the program, blah, blah, blah. Second, those games for Ole Miss traveling to, whether it be Memphis or Tulane, those always seem to get squirrely a little bit. Mm-hmm. Third, I was thinking just survive and get out. I mean, that needed to be the goal after halftime. Find a way to win. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to look pretty. Find a way to win, and that's what eventually they did. So we would obviously be having a much different conversation had they not done that. But the sky isn't falling. I will say that. I don't believe the sky is falling at all.
Yeah, in the first half, when I was like looking at the way it was going, and you can, like I said, you can watch my short that I put on at halftime and tell my mindset that at that point. But the second half was fine. The second half happened exactly what an SEC team should do to a G5 team. Exactly what a ranked team should do on the road. The second half is exactly what needed to happen whenever you were playing a team that didn't have Michael Pratt. So I think the takeaway that we should take from this game is that Ole Miss did exactly what we hoped they would do. The score that I predicted before the game was 38-14. The final score was 37-20. I mean, it kind of happened the way that I expected it to. Just didn't
like
happen the way I expected. Yeah, it just didn't go that way. But it ended up in the same place that I thought it would be.
Yeah, and it's weird how that happens sometimes, man. I mean, I think Ole Miss doesn't win this game, obviously, if it's not the more talented team. You could tell that at the end of the game. But, man, it's crazy how sometimes, we're like, okay, we think it's going to go this way. Here's the final score. Okay, well, it didn't go that way. But the final score is about the same anyway. So It all comes out in the wash.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, and this is the one way that Tulane would have won this football game. I do not think that Tulane was the better football team. Okay. And like I said, Tulane's my second team. I'm being honest about that. I do not think Tulane was the better football team. Ole Miss played extremely sloppy in the first half, and Tulane did a great job of making them play sloppy. Michael Pratt might have got them to score again in the first half, but I do not know if they would have been able to hold on against these athletes in this heat. If you looked at the run game that happened in the first half, they shut it down. In the second half, Ole Miss was able to run the ball a little bit. That wasn't because of anything that Tulane was doing or Ole Miss was doing. That has to do with the fact that SEC level athletes were dealing with the hotter than the surface of the sun temperature in Yulman Stadium, and there was a little bit more depth on the field. That is why that happened, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think that that's and we don't talk about the heat enough, but man, in New Orleans on an artificial turf like that's brutal. I mean, and that I covered the 2019 game where Ole Miss went to Memphis in the Liberty Bowl to open the year. It's horrible. It's horrible to play these early season games in the South on artificial turf.
Yeah, as we know, because we used to have it. They used to have it when I was there. And also, another thing, we all remember the kinder, gentler fall camp that Ole Miss went through this year. And we all were concerned about how that would affect Ole Miss moving forward. At the end of the game, there were cramps. I don't think there were slowing play. Tulane wasn't playing fast enough for the plays to be slown. I think they were genuinely having cramping issues and dehydration because it was so hot down there. Next week against Georgia Tech's a night game. And as it gets a little bit cooler, I think it'll be all right. This was the game we were worried about. And I think we survived it, for lack of a better word.
Survive and advance. That's the mantra. Just survive and advance in a situation like this.
All right. Now, the next thing we need to talk about is it worked out for Ole Miss. Okay. A 56-yard field goal worked out. There is no world where Lane Kiffin should have let him kick that field goal. Where Tulane could have gotten the ball back one score on the 46-yard line with a chance to already in range to throw it up to where anything could happen. There's no way Lane Kiffin should ever do stuff like that. The fourth down decisions are kind of baffling to me at times.
Well, I think that I didn't think that. I mean, I didn't think the kick had a prayer when he first ran out there. But when it came off his foot, I was like, okay, well, yeah, it had more than a prayer. But to me, does that illustrate his level of trust in Pete Golding at this point?
I literally think no, I don't think it's on Pete Golding because Tulane could not drive the ball. Even if he missed that kick, I think he had confidence in Pete Golding to get the stop. So maybe that's why he tried just to put it away.
Right. That was the point I was kind of getting at. Yeah.
But you're in a situation where one slip, one thing that you don't control all of a sudden can flip the game over something that has such low odds as kicking the field goal. It's gotten also the point with this offense, and I want to get in the weeds just for a second, so bear with me, John. Ole Miss runs an RPO offense. Now, if you can know what the keys are and understand what's going on enough to force the team to do what you want them to do, you can make sure the other players rally to stop it. And that's what they're doing right now with Quinshon Judkins. They think that they can stop Quinshon Judkins other than the passing game. So they're going to make sure that you read, they have an idea from film how it should be read so the ball gets handed off. The players are coming in and collapsing, 8, 9 players going in there. And it looks like the offensive line doesn't have a problem. But at the end of the day, it's because essentially the defense has baited the offense into doing that. And on first down, you saw like probably 13 or 14 runs on first down at the start. It was probably RPOs being called, but the other team is baiting them to do that. The best part of the Tulane defense is the defensive front. And Willie Fritz did a great job of that. I am wondering, should Ole Miss get away from RPO so much and just have passes from time to time whenever that happens, just to mess with the defense?
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of the, I don't know if cat and mouse game is the way to phrase it, but it's, as the season progresses, it seems like those kind of adjustments. Okay, for instance, from Lane Kiffin's perspective, okay, we have this on film. Teams have seen us do this. Okay, what if we do this so they think we're doing the, it's that chess match, that mental deal. So I mean, obviously, you know more about scheme and stuff like that than I do, but to me, it makes sense the way you kind of frame it like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Whenever it's a choice thing, it's kind of a pick your poison. Do you want to cover the receiver? And if you know what's going on and you know where the read is, you can kind of affect what the quarterback's going to do, where the quarterback did exactly the right thing, but the other players rally to the ball so well that it can be a less effective thing. It's kind of where defense have gotten a little bit smarter covering RPOs as well. Williams says we need to get away from Charlie Weiss Jr. and I just don't agree with that.
Yeah,
it's a situation. The way this works is there's 40 plays that go down on a chart, and they'll take 10 plays of 1st and 10, 10 plays of 2nd and 7, 10 plays of everything, and they make a card and it get that done. And Lane is just as much a part of putting that together as Charlie Weiss Jr. All Charlie Weiss Jr. does is quickly know what everything needs to do and call a play that's already on that 10 sheet. Mm-hmm. It's an RPO thing that's going on. Texas is actually up on Alabama 10-3 right now. If Bama is not careful, Texas will boat race them tonight. Seriously. And I expect Cal to do something similar to Auburn as well. I'm telling you, the SEC is down.
Yeah.
Also, third downs, we did a horrible job. That is the play calling that they need to do. They need to figure out what's going on. I like that Michael Trigg became more involved tonight. I guess more involved. He had 1 catch. So I guess that's more involved than last.
It was a big one, Stephen. It was a big
one. But I think he's going to be a weapon on third down. And as the team gets more players comes back, Zachary Franklin gets healthy, Caden Prescorn gets healthy, Michael Trigg becomes more incorporated. Hopefully Trey Harris, they figure out what's going on and we can get him back as soon as possible, because Trey Harris, it looks like if you look before the Trey Harris on the field and after it, Trey Harris was obviously the security blanket of this offense.
Yep. And I thought that too. I was when was it Jalen Knox that came in?
That was a horrible drop, by the way.
Yeah, I was like, whoa, okay, yeah, that's a step down right now. So.
And it was just one of those things on the road. It's going to help Suntarian Perkins. It's going to help Aiden Williams. I saw Aiden Williams one time, and that's when he had a bust.
Yep.
And it was just in the first half. It was an increasingly sloppy game, and it's going to get cleaned up. Do not worry about that. Georgia Tech game is going to be more talented than what Tulane just showed. Tulane's probably the second most well-coached team that Ole Miss is going to play this season.
Yeah.
Now, this is about talent and everything. It's just a well-coached team.
Mm-hmm.
Willie Fritz was really good at, I mean, heck, he took Tulane and is turning them into a New Year's Six type Bolt team.
Mm-hmm.
We need to take a deep breath about what's going on. This isn't like Louisiana Monroe or remember when Coach Ed Orgeron was the coach at Ole Miss and you were sweating a fourth quarter against Northwestern State or the Citadel for a win. This is a pretty good team on the road. It was their Super Bowl. Let's take this game for what it was, a more than double cover, and go on to the next one and try and play better against Georgia Tech, which I honestly think they will.
Yeah, I agree. That's, to sum it up, I mean, that's exactly how I would phrase it. So.
Yeah. It's a lot of interesting stuff. Now let's turn the page just a little bit with the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets coming into Vaughn Hemingway on the SEC Network next week. Man, Texas is just kind of toying with Alabama right now, by the way.
Are they?
And Mississippi State is just beating down Arizona. I'm telling you, I think Ole Miss and Mississippi State are the best two teams in the West right now. It's absolutely nuts to think about. But Mississippi State is playing well. Anyway, Monday in the water cooler should be a lot of fun. Dayton Wade, yes, his catch was insane. And Jackson Dart basically he's the one that flipped the gear of this Ole Miss team. And this was another team. We did not see that happen last year. We did not see a situation where Jackson Dart led Ole Miss, literally led Ole Miss whenever they're not ready to go, whenever he picked up everybody up and led them to a victory. He just did that against a ranked team on the road. Yeah. And that is something that Jackson Dart deserves all the credit in the world for what he just did.
Yep. I mean, last year that doesn't happen. I think we can agree on that. That doesn't happen last year.
Last year, Ole Miss loses that game.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't matter if it's backup quarterback or not.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking at halftime, I was like, I've seen this movie before. Is it going to end the same? And it didn't. I mean, and I think a large credit of that is to Jackson Dart.
Yeah. Really impressed. And Dart, dude sells out for his team. He sells out for his team. There's always one or two plays a game.
We haven't talked a lot about his. I don't remember what down it was, but it set up the field goal that gave Ole Miss the lead. His run,
that was like 2nd and 17.
Yeah. And he ran like 20 yards, breaking however many tackles. Yeah, I was like, okay, that shouldn't happen. That just shows how physical he is in that regard.
Yeah, he's playing really well. It's gotten to the point where there are some still people on Twitter, and it's absolutely nuts, or X or whatever the heck they call it now, that are very anti-Jackson Dart, and they want Spencer Sanders, and it feels like it's almost bots at this point, because, it just doesn't make sense. Ooh, that was a great play by Alabama, or it was 17-3. You just have a Jackson Dart playing really well. And somebody does say, reminds me of Matt Corral his senior year. And this post from Craig Murray is absolutely the case. Yes, Jackson Dart, he reminds me of Matt Corral. He doesn't even remind me of anything that Jackson Dart did last year. When he runs the offense, his confidence and his drive and things like that, it reminds me of Matt Corral as a senior. And that's the reason I think this team is going to be really good moving forward. Alabama's about to get beat tonight. By the way, they're going to get beat tonight.
What's happened? I'm away from the TV.
Texas is inside the 10-yard line. Even if they kick a field goal, 2 scores down with going into halftime, it's not Bama's getting beat tonight. Yeah. And App State giving North Carolina all they had. Remember, North Carolina just absolutely dominated South Carolina. The SEC's down. Yeah. Do not let anybody tell you any different. And do not let them tell you anything any different than this is good for us. This is a game that we should have gotten beat, and we ended up winning by 17 points. I mean,
Always,
I think that's an important
and
thing.
I'm usually a kind of a pessimistic person. I have that's one of my faults. But I kind of view, Kiffin talked in the off season leading up to this season about wondering how the team would respond to adversity. I think he got a positive answer on that today.
Yeah.
Because they could have laid down, right? I mean, they could have not necessarily thrown in the towel, but they could have not regrouped like they did. And I think that's kind of the answer that he was looking for. Okay, you get punched in the mouth early, still wind up winning by 17.
Yeah, it's honestly it's amazing. Real quick before we get out of here, we don't know about Trey Harris. We don't think it's something major like he has a tear or something like that, but we think something might be happening, which would be negative for Ole Miss, if that makes sense. So basically, we don't know.
Yep.
I think there's a ton of stuff to take away from this game, positive, big picture wise. Not necessarily this game. If you look at this game was incredibly sloppy. This game was essentially the 2015 Memphis game that Ole Miss found a way to absolutely comfortably win. Mm-hmm. The difference probably was Paxton Lynch versus whoever the quarterback was today, and it wasn't Michael Pratt. That was probably the difference in the game. It was Tulane Super Bowl. That place was nuts. That place, everybody was talking about how loud it was. They wanted this. They could feel it. And whenever they turned the momentum and was going to make it 17-7, I think it was very important that Ole Miss went down and got a field goal there to stem the momentum. I don't know if Ole Miss could have come back from a 17-7 deficit. I think this is the first time Ole Miss has come back from 10 points down to an AP ranked opponent in like 30 years or something like that.
It's been a minute.
And this was with Ole Miss.
No, they said I think it was actually 2016 A&M is when they did that.
Okay, 2016.
I think they said that on the broadcast. Yeah.
Okay. So it's been a long time that a ranked team came in and jumped on Ole Miss, and Ole Miss was able to regroup themselves and come back. And the second half, listen, we all have a taste because of what happened in the first half. When that 17-10 game, we all have that taste. Ole Miss dominated the second half of that football game.
Yeah.
There's really no other way to do that. And if you want to just look at the first half and what went on and not take the second half, I think that's intellectually dishonest. And I don't know. Matthew Mitchell did say that it was against 2016, just like you. Yeah, everybody is correcting me for being a moron.
That's the Shea Patterson game, I believe.
Oh, that is the Shea Patterson game.
Yeah.
Yes. That was the game where everybody thought he was going to be Johnny Football.
Yeah, and then he was not. But
yeah, he was definitely not. But he was the first draft pick in the USFL.
Hey, hang the banner.
The second was Jordan Ta'amu, which is hilarious. So, yeah, I think that Ole Miss is going to be fine. I think that game actually gave Ole Miss the test that they needed, and the fact that it was a game that they could win, and the adversity was up to where we could see exactly what Jackson Dart was made up, what that defense was made up. Would the defense be able to win a game when the offense was sputtering? That's a lot of questions that we didn't have the answer last year to until after the LSU game or in the second half of the LSU game.
Yeah.
And having those answers now, I think that's very important. And I'm looking forward to seeing what could happen against Georgia Tech. Now, before we get out of here, what are you expecting against Georgia Tech besides a much better effort offensively?
Yeah, I mean, I think Ole Miss will look more polished against Georgia Tech. Again, I do think Ole Miss is the better team in that scenario next week. It's obviously in Oxford. I'll have to kind of get into the weeds a little bit and look at some stats and stuff, but I do expect Ole Miss to probably win again next week.
Yeah, and in this game, okay, this is what everybody needs to know this weekend. Obviously, the first half is clouded your thinking, but this is the one thing to keep in mind. Ole Miss needs to beat Georgia Tech by 1 point, because every one of them is going to be looking at Alabama, and that game is coming up on the schedule. This is the ultimate trap game.
Yeah.
I would probably take Ole Miss to not cover this week, if you think about it, just because it has a chance to be sloppy. And I know we want Ole Miss to be different than what we saw today. I don't know if that's possible. They are going to be looking at Alabama, and after Alabama drops the game to Texas tonight, because that's the way it looks like it's happening, everybody's going to be talking about how increasingly winnable that game looks.
Yeah. I do think that some of the issues we saw today will be ironed out next week, but it is a trap game in that respect. That when Alabama's, especially when Lane Kiffin puts a big emphasis on this Alabama game every year, yeah, that definitely is possible to be kind of looking a week ahead when you've got a Power 5 team coming into town. You need to take care of business.
Oh my goodness, this we keep trying to get out of here, and they do that. LSU is beating Grambling 14-10.
The Fighting Devontae Kincaids.
Yes. I'm telling you, it's just been a weird day. Like Austin P and Tennessee,
Yeah.
Tennessee in the second half. Eastern Kentucky and Kentucky only beat them by 10. It's been a weird day in the Southeastern Conference. Ole Miss getting a 17-point win against a ranked team on the road. That is not nearly the worst result that has happened this weekend.
That's very true. Yeah, that is absolutely true.
All right. Thank you very much, John Macon, for stopping by. This has been the instant reaction, instant overreaction. I think my thoughts that what we learned Monday is going to be a whole lot about the mettle of this team and what this transfer team is kind of made of. And also the fact of my keys to the game that I did last week, they just ignored them. And if they would have done them, they would have been all right. But they just absolutely is like, we just do not need to pay attention to Steve. Yeah. But anyway, John, thank you very much for stopping by. And I hope everybody has a better weekend. We got the W. A win's a win. And we'll see everybody next week.
All right. Thanks, Stephen.